So, 1 week into class, let's see, show of hands, how many of us managed to practice see, hear, feel every day in your 10-minute formal meditation period? What does this mean?
I missed 2 days, so
Okay,
I almost did it.
yeah, sure. There is a part of me that I used to say, well, almost doesn't count. You got to do it every day. And when I first started with this practice, I would mark the days on the calendar that I did make it to sit, and if I missed a day, it was like, oh man, screwed it up. I'm no good at this. But the fact of the matter is that cultivating a daily practice takes time. You know, so you set the intention, do your best to get to the cushion every day, and some days you miss, and you don't trip out about it. You just get there the next day. A good tactic, honestly, even if 10 minutes seems like an insurmountable task, is to just literally put your ass on the seat, even if it's just for 1 second, because likely if you get that far, you'll stay. So great, good work. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Any insights, epiphanies, questions, anything interesting come up? 1 week of practice. What's going on? Yes, Michael and Lisa.
Yeah, I love this practice. I've
Cool.
had different meditation practices for years, and it's something is really magical about being able to name the inner voice and the thoughts. And as soon as I catch that and then just go back to here, here, and fall back into that, it's really helpful.
Beautiful. Happy to hear that. So sounds like you're experiencing somewhat of a depersonalization of the incessant mental chatter, and you're feeling a bit of a liberation
Yeah, yeah, it's having that tool to be able to name it as here, which creates more of a seamless experience
there.
rather than the oh god, there went my mind again.
Right. Which is just perpetuating the mental talk.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this misconception out there, I think, about meditation practice where you have to stop thinking, but that's not really possible in my experience. What is possible is just to notice that you're thinking and notice the activity of thinking and allow it to be the way it is. But just the noticing somehow makes it less sticky.
Mm.
Yeah? Did
Yeah,
anyone else have an experience like that? Thank you, Lisa.
thank you.
Anyone else have something they'd like to share about their practice or a question or a sticky point or anything at all? Observation, epiphany?
Um, I I'll share.
Please, could you tell me your name, please? I'm sure it's
Ariadne.
not. Pardon me?
Ariadne.
Ariadna.
Ariadne.
Yeah, good to
Yeah,
see you again.
good to see you. Thank you. I'm not sure. I just got late to the call. I'm not sure if the other share was about this, but I noticed like when I have a lot of triggers and a lot of crazy stuff going on in my life, those days like I can only get back on on track like 3 or 4 times, and like the whole 10 minutes was just lost in thought.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
so
Yeah.
but it's still the attempt was made. So
The
and
attempt is made. Absolutely.
yeah, and then I trying to not judge myself for the fact that I like that day just I couldn't really focus
hmm
and redirect. So
Totally. Just by show of hands, did anyone else have an experience of finding it difficult to focus? Let's be honest. So what you report is like par for the course, totally common. And you have to allow for a certain amount of groping and grasping in this practice. It's a phrase that my teacher always uses. But remember, it is the systematic cultivation of skills. And every time you show up and practice, you're cultivating those three primary skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. Even when it seems like you're just sitting there and you're just rambling with the mind. But every time you notice that the mind has been hijacked by a thought, you see it, you notice that happen, and you guide the mind back to the practice, that is a moment of mindfulness. And with time and practice, you just string those moments together more and more so that the mind doesn't wander and you can just really soak into a technique. But to get to that space, you have to go through the difficult phase of what you're describing now of just, man, this is challenging. But I promise you, with time and with consistent effort, you can do it. Anyone can do it. Discipline is the key. Good work. Someone else. Dawn Davis, talk to me.
Hi, can you hear me
Hi,
okay?
I sure can.
Um, I found this practice to be a little more effortful than other practices because I live in such a noisy environment, and having to constantly state here, here, here when there's so much noise is difficult for me. I actually found it, I don't know, less meditative in some ways. So I was
Hmm.
wondering if maybe the point is to find that meditative state, and then when you notice that your attention is going to something, that's when you name it. Because if I'm naming everything I hear, it's just constant, and I can actually drop into a meditation without that naming. So I don't know if I'm being clear, but it just felt like work almost.
Yeah, uh, I hear you loud and clear. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're compared to other meditative techniques that you've explored, this one particular seemed like more labor intensive. Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. It is. There's definitely mental strength required here. Um, the upside of the practice, the upside of the noting, is that it prevents the mind from wandering, or at least serves as kind of a metronome so that you immediately notice when the mind has wandered. Whereas in other techniques, let's say noticing the breath, just to use an example, can be very relaxing. But you're with the breath, then you spiral out and you have this daydream for 10 minutes, but you don't even realize that happened. And then you come back to the breath and the mind just kind of glosses over that 10-minute period of daydream. So this technique, though more demanding, does give us that moment by moment feedback as to whether we're here or not. And your practice is for you to uh, put together. So if there's times where this see here feel technique just feels like too much and you have another tool in the toolbox and you know you just need to relax, by all means, use that one. I will say, with continued practice, the see here feel technique, just by means of kind of pulling apart the sensing experience into those three threads creates spaciousness, and a side effect there is tranquility. So sometimes it does feel like labor, but there's a payoff to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share about this week's practice?
Hi.
Hey,
So,
buddy,
can you hear me?
I sure can.
Sometimes I find it kind of difficult to um, focus on one of the things. My mind tend to focus on two of the things. Say, like when I close my eyes, I feel that emptiness, the dark, and that is coupled with the noise outside. So my mind just focuses on the two at the same time. But then I have to shift it back to that one focus point. So is that okay?
Yes, that's totally okay. So what you're describing, I think, is you're noticing co-arisings of sensing experience, seemingly simultaneous. Yeah, that's totally okay. And at that point, you would want to implement what they call double noting. So just to use the example that you described, you drop into your practice and you feel this spacious emptiness, and simultaneously you hear. So the label in that moment becomes feel here or here feel. I guess if we were to look very, very, very closely, they're not happening at the same time. They're at least one iota, 1 millisecond apart, but it can seem that way. So that at that point, a double noting strategy is totally okay.
Thank you.
That's useful for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So if no one else has anything they'd like to add, we can start with this week's lesson. Okay. So we're going to introduce a new technique this evening. That technique is called feel rest. So the see, hear, feel technique that we explored last week was um, an open awareness practice. We placed no restrictions on awareness. We just allowed it to go where it went, and we noted and labeled the sense category where it landed. This week we're going to be narrowing our focus just on feel space. Now remember that includes physical, somatic bodily sensations and internal emotional sensations. So how many of you, by show of hands, would like to relax more? Yeah, I think that's everyone who wouldn't, right? How many of you have had the experience where you would like to relax, but there's not enough time? And then in the rare moments where there is time, you find that you're not really able to relax. Yeah. Or you choose an activity that's not actually restful, like scrolling the gram or checking your email or whatever. What I've found in my practice, particularly with martial arts, Tai Chi and Qigong in particular, is that relaxation is a skill that takes practice. Rest is a skill that takes practice to notice. And if we're not practicing it, we can't do it that well. The flip side of that coin is if we do practice it, uh, we can notice restful qualities in the body more clearly. The more we notice them, the more they tend to proliferate, the more we can soak our concentration into them, into the feeling of rest, the more it tends to spread. The more it tends to spread, the better it feels. The better it feels, the more we like to concentrate on it. So we see this positive feedback loop develop for the reward states of meditation. Remember, this is a skill-based approach to mindfulness training. We're training our attention by building 3 primary skills. I already said them once. Does anyone care to raise your hand and tell me what they are? Is anyone brave enough to do that? The 3 primary skills of the meditator. Shamim, I'm saying your name correctly, yes?
Yes, that's the way people say
Okay.
it. Yeah, clarity,
Hmm?
concentration,
Yes, sir.
equanimity.
You're the man. You got it. Easy acronym that you can remember them is just CC&E. We say CC&E: concentration, clarity, and equanimity. So, with regard to this technique, feel rest, the way we're strengthening our concentration is by focusing on the task at hand, which is detecting subtle restful qualities that are already present in the body, whether somatically or emotionally. The clarity piece is allowing see and hear inner and outer activity just to kind of play out in the background, but to pay attention to the body for this period of practice. Another piece for clarity is, you may be experiencing frustration in a moment or boredom or whatever. So it requires clarity to tease apart any available quality of restfulness in the body, even though there are some other things happening. And the equanimity factor here is, yes, your mind's going to wander. Yes, it may be difficult to detect rest. Yes, you may actually feel a little uncomfortable in moments. And we just let that be the way that it is, and we proceed with the practice. So those are the 3 muscles that we're strengthening, and every time we show up to the practice, we cultivate those skills more fully. So I did mention we are kind of sensitizing the palate to rest. I'd like to take a moment to define exactly what I mean by rest. Most of you probably think, like I do, rest means like tranquility, relaxation. There's a pleasant flavor attached to it. But I would encourage you for this practice and for our practice this evening to think of rest a little more globally. So I did mention in the lecture last week that we can think of these sense categories, see, hear, and feel spatially. And what I meant by that was maybe you've all been practicing now for a week, so you may have had the experience. Maybe did anyone notice, let's say, that your attention was called to hear space, even though nothing was happening there? There was no internal mental talk or no external sound. It's just you found your attention was in hear space. And so it was silent, even though your attention was called there, but that would be called a restful state. Or you're meditating, your eyes are closed, you find that your attention is called to internal visual field, but there's no image there. It's empty. That would be called a restful state. With regard to the practice that we'll explore this evening, you may find that your attention is called toward the emotional landscape of your body, even though nothing is actually happening there. But we learn to appreciate that quality of rest, that quality of nothing going on. There's a restfulness there that we can soak into and be nourished by if we train our minds to actually notice it. It's the same with physical sensation. The neutrality of the body sometimes feels like nothing's actually happening. That can be very nourishing if we get very clear on the experience of rest. So this is a practice, what we're doing this evening is a practice of sensitizing our somatic palate to the neutrality that can be very restful if we allow ourselves to soak into it. So it's a very useful kind of self-care tactic. We all want to be able to rest more. And the more we train our minds to really become clear on the experience of rest, the more fulfilling those moments of rest become. I'll just say briefly, this unified mindfulness system is divided into 4 quadrants. Those 4 quadrants are appreciate, nurture, transcend, and express. We're gonna focus on a technique from each quadrant over the course of this 8 weeks. See, hear, feel, and feel rest would be in the appreciate quadrant. That is to say, we're just soaking into what is. We're just noticing what's already happening and learning to appreciate it. More on the other 3 in weeks to come. 2 ways to feel rest, and I'll be sure to say more about this in the guided piece. You can find it in the body just by bringing your awareness into your body and scanning the body. You may be able to detect subtle restful qualities in the body, maybe through the breath. I personally like to soak into the exhale. I find the exhale to be very relaxing. You could also just create rest, like relax any muscular tension. Particularly with regard to muscular tension, if we're not paying close attention, that is to say, if we lack clarity, muscular tension can become so constant that it feels normal. I like to use the analogy when you live close to an airport, you stop hearing the sounds of the airplanes. You just normalize them. Muscular tension is very much the same. We hold it habitually so often that it just becomes the way that we feel. And when we approach this practice of feel rest, we might be confronted with how tense we actually are, but there's an opportunity there to relax. To really consciously try to relax the musculature. In this way, we are creating restfulness. In this technique, we will again be using a noting strategy. Sorry about that, Dawn. But the labels that we'll be speaking this evening are just two words only: feel and rest. I personally like the noting strategy because, like I said, it serves as kind of like a metronome to keep the mind grounded in the practice. Again, I'll say more about this in the guided portion, but we'll be labeling the word, using the mental label feel to detect any physical sensation at all. And when we can detect any flavor of rest, just notice it and use the mental label rest. Do your best to sink into it. So the practice is really scanning the body externally and internally, looking for rest or creating rest, acknowledging its presence, soaking into it, and repeating that process. Again, it's a positive feedback loop. The more we learn to concentrate the mind on rest, the more those qualities spread from what we would call a local sensation, let's say in the belly, to a global sensation, cover the whole body. The better it feels, the more easy it is to concentrate on it. The more we concentrate on it, the better it feels. So we're using the reward state of rest to cultivate the skill of concentration. Benefits of the practice, I think, are self-explanatory. More rest, more relaxation in life. I spoke about the proliferation. And some of you may be able to detect spaciousness as the body-mind really, really starts to relax and contact rest. You may be able to perceive a spaciousness. That is to say, you might feel bigger. I hope you have an experience of that. Does anyone have any questions about what I've said? Is anyone confused? Or before we move into the practice, I want to make sure everything is clear. All right. Everyone feels crystal clear on the practice then? Oh, someone asked would I repeat the names of 4 quadrants, but Alec is on the ball and he already got it. Good work. Okay, so if there's no questions, then we should dive right in. Sound good?
Are you going to walk us through?
Who said that?
Ariadna, sorry.
Are you asking if I'm going to guide the practice?
Well, just like the first minute or so, or like a few seconds of it.
No, not going to do that. Just
Okay,
assume
then,
that you know what I'm. No, I'm just
then,
joking.
then my question is, can you repeat it?
I was just teasing you. I am going to guide the
Okay.
practice, so you'll hear my voice. I'll be offering cues throughout.
Okay,
We'll
thanks.
practice for approximately 15 minutes, and you'll hear my voice throughout the period. Cool? Okay. Then I would encourage everyone now to find a comfortable position. Please make sure that your microphone is muted. Actually, I think I can do that myself. Okay. So just go ahead and settle in your posture. Find a comfortable position. Always a good idea just to take a moment to check in with the body and just relax any tension, starting with the brow. Relax the forehead. Let the jaw go slack. Press the tongue to the roof of the mouth. And allow the shoulders to fall down away from the ears. And just take a moment to do whatever you need to do to relax your body and drop into the practice. So we'll be narrowing our focus just on feel, external physical sensations and the emotional sensation, allowing see and hear just to play out in the background. We begin just by scanning the body and looking for any flavor of rest whatsoever. Could be anywhere, and it could be very subtle. The internal mental labels we'll be using are just feel and rest. Using the label feel anytime you're scanning or exploring the body, and using the label rest anytime you've struck gold and found rest. You have the option to really float to different parts of the body, searching for rest. You could hold the body globally, just kind of cover the entire body with your awareness, or you could bounce back and forth between those two options. You may find the exhale a fruitful area of exploration, just allowing the body mind to rest more deeply with every exhale. If you are able to detect some quality of rest, the opportunity there is just to absorb into it. Just really let your attention soak into that quality and allow it to spread. If you're as yet unable to detect any quality of rest, it's all good. You're still strengthening those skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And remember that subtle is significant. If you notice the mind has wandered away from the technique, it's good that you noticed. Just guide the mind back to the practice, scanning the body, looking internally and externally for any flavor of rest. Again, you may find it useful to utilize the exhale, allowing every exhale to relax the body mind. The option there is to then toggle your attention away from the physical sensation of the exhale and own the experience of restfulness. Soaking into that restful state and allowing it to spread. You may find it useful to relax your effort in this practice and really just open to the restfulness that's already there. Just feel, just rest. And taking these last final moments really just to soak in, really give that restfulness permission to just spread throughout the whole body. Allow that quality just to really cover the body. Just rest. Now, in a moment, you'll hear a bell that will end this period of practice. But your challenge is to maintain this quality of restfulness, even as we enter our dialogue Q&A, to keep your attention in the background, even as we talk together, this quality of restfulness that you've stumbled upon. You can continue to notice it, and in noticing it, nourish it. You guys look well rested. How did that go?
Relaxing.
James, you got something to share?
I came to note that I have a lot more. I came to the note of the attention building at certain times, and just being aware of that to be able to relax into it. I thought I was fairly relaxed beforehand, but still a lot going on within my system
Mm-hmm.
to be able to even relax further, I suppose, or deeper.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was searching maybe for an emotion as well at times. So I don't know whether because the hear and see was still playing in my ear a little bit. But yeah, that was my experience.
Good. Sounds good. So I'll say, if you find yourself searching for an emotion, it could be that you're experiencing in that moment emotional rest. It could be that there is no emotion present, and that's an opportunity to soak into inner rest. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, that's
So
interesting.
you're in the practice, you're looking for an emotion, scanning, where is it, where is it, where is it? But there's an opportunity there to just, oh, there's nothing there. And just soak into that emptiness. Remember, we defined rest at the beginning here. It's not, doesn't just have to mean tranquility. It can also just mean non-activity. So if there's no emotion playing out in the body, cool, nothing's happening. Rest into that.
Yeah, true.
There was something else you mentioned, which is very common in our report of this practice, is that often the reciprocal of what we're looking for shows itself. So we're wanting to find rest and we find tension, we find discomfort, we find frustration. As our clarity deepens, the sweet becomes sweeter and the difficult becomes more challenging. There is a purification there in turning toward tension or emotional discomfort, because as we can just rest into it, relax around it, we become liberated from it. So particularly with tension, the more you can rest into it and allow it to be the way it is, the more it unwinds. That would apply to physical muscular tension and trapped emotions. Now the experience of letting those kind of things go is not always pleasant. In fact, it's never pleasant. Those things have to be felt on the way out. There's no way to skip that step, but it is a liberation. It's a release. And on the other side of those difficult moments of letting go is a more fully intact, fully available, fully present version of you. So a lot of this work is turning toward the nasty bits. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. You'll hear me say that often, but it's totally worth doing because it does take an enormous amount of energy to hold those unfelt emotions in. And as we start to liberate them, there's more energy available to us. So, spot on, James. Good work. Sounds very good.
Cool.
Anyone else? Natasha.
I've had 2 concussions back to back, and it was very similar to that last one where I thought I was looking for healing, but I kept noticing that muscular tension in my neck. You could probably see me readjusting. And then I just kind of labeled it. And eventually I noticed I just almost felt an absence of the feeling. That
Hmm.
it was just, I don't want to say numb because it wasn't numb, but it no longer bothered me.
Wow. And would you characterize that that noticing the absence as pleasant or unpleasant?
Yeah, pleasant.
Pleasant.
You said neutral.
Beautiful. So it sounds like you had the experience of exactly what I was trying to explain, that the developing the capacity to notice that nothing's happening, but that's actually an opportunity to soak into rest. It's a window, not a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. Now you have that in your toolbox. So, again, we talked about you can bring this practice into your life. You can
Yeah.
find opportunities to rest just as you're out there moving around planet Earth. Very
Thank
good.
you.
That's exactly what we were going for, Natasha. Good work.
I had a question. It's
By all
Ariane.
means.
I think during the guided part, you mentioned something about there's a difference between relaxation and rest. Or like, can you say more about that? Or maybe
I
I
think
misunderstood.
I don't remember saying that exactly, but I think probably I was pointing toward what Natasha just mentioned. So we have this idea of rest as this very deeply pleasant, tranquil thing. And in this practice, we find that actually nothing, no interactivity whatsoever, nothing going on, can be an opportunity to soak into rest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
I, I feel like the soaking in for me is in the relaxation, like soaking in, like releasing it and feeling
Sure.
the relaxation is like this progressive feeling.
Hmm.
But we are saying rest is actually the state of like not feeling anything.
It could be. It could be, or it could totally be what you just described of just soaking into that relaxation.
Okay.
What
It could be
what
this progressive feeling.
pardon me?
It could be this progressive feeling of release.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And sometimes that will be available to you in your practice, and that's a very rich kind of feeling of relaxation and rest. But sometimes that may not be available. So in those moments, you may find yourself looking for rest, looking for rest. Where is it? Where is it? I can't find it. There's nothing here. There's an opportunity there to soak into that nothing here quality of rest. So nothing's happening. It's kind of empty. Okay, drop into that.
Thank
Just to be clear on the example, it's like if your attention is called to, let's say, internal mental talk, but nothing's actually happening there, but that's where your attention is, that would be called a restful state. And there's an opportunity there to soak into it.
Okay. And I had one last question.
Yes.
Are you distinguishing between body sensation and actual like emotions?
Yes.
And either way, they both get labeled as feel.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you find your attention on the emotional side, on the internal feel space, but there's no emotion present, that could even be considered rest.
Thank you.
Somebody else. Yes, Michael and Lisa.
Talk about this. I was having a sensation that was very uncomfortable and that I would describe as anxiety, just around my ribcage. And you said something in your guidance about finding the clue of restfulness. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I heard it and decided to rest into the anxiety.
Wow.
And it worked. That it was just about accepting the feeling enough.
That's beautiful. So it sounds like a pretty profound insight. Resting into even an uncomfortable.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something about like noticing if just a little hint of restfulness or
Mhm.
uh, and I took it as using what was here, and what was here was this what I would label as anxious feeling.
Mhm.
So I just decided that it could be restful,
Sure.
be there.
Or you could allow yourself to just relax into that feeling of anxiety.
Mm.
And on the other end of that, what happened?
The equanimity, the kind of a dissipation, but just a peacefulness in the what is.
Wow. Boom.
Mm.
Beautiful work. That's a profound insight. So she's reporting that she had a difficult kind of emotional arising. Rather than clench around it or wish it wasn't happening, she enabled herself to rest into it and even find some subtle flavor of restfulness, even in an arising of anxiety. And her experience of that was liberation from a difficult moment, a difficult emotion. That's pretty high level stuff. You're already on week 7. Good work. Very good work. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for your guidance.
We'll have time for one more. If anyone has a burning observation, I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Well, like I said last week, you all have my email. So if anything comes up in your practice this week and you'd like some clarity on it, just drop me a line and I'll do my best to get back to you. Uh, we have homework. That's the nature of the course. So the homework this week is to stick with your 10-minute daily practice, but now we're going to be working with this new technique that we've explored this evening, feel rest. If you want to go for extra credit, you could lengthen that period of 10 minutes and add in a see, hear, feel practice. You might find that the see, hear, feel practice is a little less demanding than feel rest because feel rest has a much more narrow focus. So if, let's say, you want to sit for 20 minutes, you might utilize the see, hear, feel practice to really cultivate concentration. And then at the 10-minute mark, move into your feel rest practice. Just an option. All you have to do this week is 10 minutes of feel rest. Sound clear? All right. Any questions before we close? Beautiful. Well, I thank all you guys for showing up and doing the work. It's very important. It's a good choice. And I'm happy to be here with you in this practice. So I look forward to seeing you all same time next week.